Hello?
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to DIY Expense Tracker, how you use your DIY Expense Tracker in your business. My name is Lynn Webb, for those of you that don't know me. And today we're going to be walking you through a little bit about how you use it, what's the right way, etc. I apologize for the lighting this morning. It's a little bit, we're having some lighting issues, so I apologize for that. So before we get started, we have a few people in the room. I want to show you sort of, when I'm not looking at you, I want to tell you what's going on logistically. So on this side of me here, I have a monitor which shows me what you see. And on this side of me is all the logistics behind doing the webinar. So quite often I have to jump to the screen. And then I have one down here, which actually shows me what you see. So it's possible, let me just get that adjusted. So if you're having any technical issues, I will see that on this end. So that's kind of what's going on. Make sure I've got my sound on, which is good. All right, so let's just check in with the people in the room. So first of all, if you have a question on your screen, you should have a place that you can either raise your hand or you can type in to the chat. So I do monitor the chat as we go, which is why I'm kind of looking over here a little bit, and I'll answer the questions. And I think that's about it. Now, keep in mind, this webinar, when we're recording it right now, is live. For some of you, you'll be watching the replay. But whenever it's live, I always say anything could happen. Truly anything could happen. You never know. We could have technology. We could have someone walk into my office. We never know. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to share a screen with you here. Let me just figure out where it is. Just one moment. See, it's always technology. Here it is. Okay. All right, perfect. So I'm just going to jot out of this screen just for a second so I can bring up DIY Expense Tracker. Okay, so most of you should be logged in. The email went to primarily people who have an account with DIY, I think. So if you're not logged in, that's a whole different story and super, super easy, really quick. If you go to DIYExpensetracker.ca, you can just go to this login, or sorry, go to this free trial button and sign up here for the free trial. So super easy, gives it to you for 30 days. You can do whatever you want to do, and you can do it right now if you like and follow along. It only takes a couple seconds. Okay, so DIY Expense Tracker is a very simple accounting software. It's meant to be simplistic. It's not meant to compete with some of the big boys, but the big boys out there, and just so you know, some of the big boys include like QuickBooks or Xero or Simply Accounting or Wave. It's not meant to compete with them. Those are true accounting softwares. And
I think that if you are a software guru, those are sometimes really good. But when you're just a little guy and you're at home, they can really be a lot of drama and overkill, and you can really get yourself in trouble by using them if you don't know what you're doing or you want to spend lots of time. So DIY Expense Tracker is meant to replace those with something very simple and very easy that you can just simply record your transactions on, and you can record your transactions, and it generates the reports at the end of the year that your accountant needs. So again, it's just meant to be simple and easy. It's not meant to be complicated, and that's really important for those people that are watching this that you're thinking it's going to be competitive to some of the big boys out there. It's not meant to be that at all. But one of the things it does do is it takes away that drama. It is very simple. If you ever had an accountant give you a spreadsheet and they said, here, go record your expenses here, it kind of does that. So it sort of replaces the spreadsheet in a really nice and friendly way. So when you get into DIY Expense Tracker, the first thing you're going to be greeted with is your dashboard here. And beyond the dashboard, we'll explain that a little bit later, but what I want you to do very first off is you're going to go to the settings button. The very first thing you're going to do is go to this one here called Company. Now this is your particular company. We are Sally Smith for demo purposes is the name of our company. Now you will notice as we go through this, I'm not sure where everybody's located, but we're going to do it as if you're in Alberta, because that's where I am. But the other thing about Alberta, there's no PST. Now DIY does handle the PST, but for simplicity's sake, we are just going to do the GST version of it, and you can turn PST on at any time, and you can do that by simply choosing your province. Okay, so the company settings, your name, obviously, or the company name. This is the fiscal year end. If you're a sole proprietor, so meaning if you do your business taxes with your personal taxes, and you kind of give it all to your accountant, then your year end is going to be December. But there are some folks on here that have taken the time to incorporate, and if you have incorporated, then you could have a month which is anywhere of your year end. So that's what this is for. If you want to put your CRA number in here, you certainly can. A little tip, we have another version rolling out in October. We're hoping for the later this month, and we will be doing some really cool things with that, with your business number. So right now it doesn't do anything, but it will down the road. Now your business province and your taxation province, the reason those are different, your business province is the province that you work in, or sorry, province that you're incorporated in or that you live in. But some people live in one province and they work in another. So for example, here in Alberta, we have a lot of people from the East Coast that come in for to work in the oil field. So their business province would be the East Coast, so Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, wherever, but their working province, their taxation province would be Alberta. And the reason for that is just because you pay different taxes depending where you're actually working. So that's why there's a difference between the two. But for most part, you just put your province in, and like I said, if you're in a different province and you need PST, that's all you do, but we're just going to use today for Alberta. Okay, once you're done that, you hit the save button in the top corner, and that returns you back to your settings. Okay, step number 2, we're going to go to the accounts button. Now the accounts button are your bank accounts and everything, and credit card accounts. So it's the ones that you specifically use in your business. In the very next step, we're going to talk about a little bit about that. But for now, let's just say you have a bank account, and it is, you know, it can be just about from anybody, but we're going to call this, you know, whatever, we're going to call this My Main Bank. You can put your bank name in there if you wanted to, put just about anything, and you can pick a color. The screen gets color coded according to that. And then you can, just by clicking on it, you can change your credit card, and let's just call it the blue credit card. Okay, so you can see that it now lays it. Now notice most of DIY Expense Tracker goes alphabetical, so if you notice it's kind of dropped here. There's 3 other categories that we always sort of leave in here. So one of them is cash spending. Another one is income, which you actually can't, you can change, but you can't delete. We're going to explain that one shortly. And the other one's miscellaneous. So what this is trying to do is capture all the places that you spend your money from, okay? So that's the account. And you can just go back. Oh, if you have another account, by the way, you would just enter a new account. Let's just say you have a savings account. We'll just put that in. And it just adds it. Okay, so let's go back to the settings. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a slideshow before we carry on, as soon as I can figure out how to do that. Just 1 second here. Let's share. Oh, I still want to do this. Sorry, I apologize. Technology, right? Perfect. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your bank account first. So your bank account matters in how you do it, and so do your credit cards. And the reason why they matter so much is because if you're ever, when you're looking at CRA, it's sort of everything is driven, it sort of drives from the bank account. So how you put your money together is super important. The DIY expense tracker is driven by the how you spend your money for that specific reason. If you kind of always follow that formula, how did I spend this money, then you sort of avoid trouble a little bit more. But it matters. So having your bank account as one bank account actually can cause a lot of issues. What do I mean by that? When you are getting paid and you put that money into your personal bank account, that's the wrong thing to do. You want to make sure you have a bank account which is dedicated to business and a credit card which is dedicated to business also. Now, it doesn't need to be a business credit card. It just needs to be a credit card that's dedicated to business usage. For the sole proprietors in this webinar, your bank account doesn't need to be a business bank account either. It just needs to be a dedicated bank account. For the incorporated companies in here, you must have a separate bank account for your incorporated company. I highly recommend that they don't combine. Now, why am I saying that? Well, there's lots of different reasons why you would have a separate bank account, but here are kind of the top 4. So first of all, if you were ever involved in an audit with CRA, one of the things that they would do is say to you, before you backtrack, if you were involved in an audit with CRA, they are auditing years past. They're not saying, what did you do last week or last month? They're saying, what did you do 2 years ago? So generally speaking, when an audit is done, it's 2 years back, sometimes 3. So they would say to you, give us your bank account. So you would give their bank accounts, and then they would go through and say, well, you know this $500 that you put into your bank account here on September 1st, 2016, what was that $500 for? Now, if you're like most people, you're gonna be like, I don't know, I have no idea. When you have a business, the onus of responsibility is on you to know what incoming money comes into your account. So if you can't explain that $500, then CRA usually will assess that as business income, and they will charge you taxes on it. Even if it isn't, that $500 could have been, you know, a lucky night at the casino for all I know, but they will have you, they will assess you taxes on that, or they likely will assess you taxes on that. So you want to make sure intention is always really key. And when you have a business account and a personal account very separate, you're specifically showing, this is my business, this is my personal. So if they were to look at your personal accounts and say, what's this $500 for? You would know if it's on your personal account, it was personal money. And you may not know what it is, but you have a much better chance at being able to prove that it was personal money rather than business money. So super, super important that you keep business separate. You never want to confuse things with your personal life when it comes to CRA. They may ask, but you don't ever want to deliberately confuse the issue by mixing them. So that one is number 1, always on the list. The other thing that it does, and you're going to see as we go through, I'm going to show you a sample bank statement. You'll see it's like a bookkeeping shortcut. It'll make your life way easier for clarity. And if you happen to lose receipts, if you're like me, you go stick gas in your car and you chuck that receipt on the seat, and sometimes it disappears, which does happen. So it sort of replaces lost receipts, not in the eyes of CRA, by the way, you have to have the receipt, but at least you don't lose the expense in your business. And because there's so much clarity, it actually reduces your accounting fees. So there's lots of good reasons to have a separate business account. Okay, so I'm just going to, give me 1 second here. Okay, perfect, there I am. Okay, so knowing that's sort of how that your bank account has to be very separate. Before we get into sort of DIY, let's start looking at the expense accounts. That's this button right here, this expense types. You can see right here. Now we're going to go to the expense types and let me explain what these are. When you have a receipt from your bank statement, you're going to have you're going to type it in where the expense goes to. So that expense might be, for example, you bought pens, and that is office supplies. This is a listing of all the expenses that's available to you, this particular list. Now, before we get into doing any changes, I want to explain this one called an asset item. It's a terrible word for people that don't know bookkeeping, but basically what an asset is something that you own. So it might be a vehicle, or it might be something that you own, but it's over. There's two different types of assets in DIY. The first one is things you own. So if you think about it, this is something I could sell in a garage sale or sell on an online, Kijiji or something. So you can think about it like that. The other thing that you use asset item for is things which are outside the norm, which don't really fit. So for example, when you take money out of your business bank account and put it into your personal bank account, that doesn't really fit. It's not really an expense, but yet it comes out of your bank. So that button is for kind of like things that don't really fit into the other categories, if you can kind of imagine. So some of the things that we have this one here called big purchases or assets over $500. So that's when you buy one item over $500, you have to treat it differently. So you can see this has been checked. When you pay the government, the Canada Revenue Agency, for example, you can see that these are checked as well, because those aren't expenses per se, but they're payments which came out. If we go down, here's one, owner or shareholder draws. This is things you pay yourself. So again, that's checked. So most of the common ones are in here. It's rare that you'll have to check that, but you might. So I wanted to explain. Okay, so that's what an asset item is. Let me just check the chat and I'll just see. I don't see any questions. Okay, good. So let's move on. So this listing here is not fixed. So you can definitely change what this listing says. And one of the things we're going to change is this advertising or promotion, okay? Just as an example. If you click on it, it brings the category up, and you can just say, oh, this is, you can change it to whatever kind of advertising. Let's say you do 3 different types of advertising and you'd really like to see them separated. So this is advertising, and let's just say you advertise on the radio. Okay, that's one type of advertising. So you can see it changes. Now you want to set up another type of advertising. So you would hit this new expense type, advertising, and let's say you do banner and online. So let's say you use Google AdWords, or we'll just say online, or Facebook, or you do something like that. So that's advertising. And a third advertising, let's say you're going to, like business cards, brochures, or other hard advertisements that you do. So we're just going to call it paper advertising. All right, so you can see how it alphabetically appears, and it just simply sets up the account types the way you want to see them. So when we're looking at the reports later, it will help differentiate where you've kind of spent your money, if that's one expense that you wanted separate. The other ones that are in there that come by default, those are ones that are already set up for you that are the most common, and then you can start to tweak this a little bit on your own. Okay, I just want to check in for questions. A question from Mark asking about how do I set up my vehicle? Thank you very much. So down at the bottom here, you will see there's vehicle miscellaneous and repairs and maintenance. So sometimes it's called auto or fuel or whatever. So these 3 defaults are set up from you automatically. And the how you use it, we're going to get to that right away. We're going to talk a little bit about write-offs. And if you're looking for the how, then that's where you're going to get that information. But here are the vehicle expenses here at the bottom. For now, I'll come back to that question when we do the write-offs. Okay, back to settings. No more question. Okay, good. No more questions on there. The other one I want you to set up here are the income types. So the income types are the way you make your money. Now we put products and services in here as a default, but you can go ahead and set them up any way you want. So let's say you have products and let's say services, maybe you do consulting, right? So you can say consulting fees. And again, that's how you edit, but you can add. So if you had a new one, and let's just say you did a lot of trade shows, we're going to say this is trade show sales. And you can go on and you can split them up that way so you can see the differences. Makes sense? Let me just check in on questions. Good. No questions. Okay. Wonderful. So before we go any further, what I want to do is now give you a bit of a lesson on how we do, how we sort the shoebox, right? So how you put stuff together. Now, remember when I said that the whole DIY program is driven by how you spend your money. So it always starts with a bank account. Now, I have a sample bank account we're going to be using. It's going to come in as soon as I show you, and we're going to sort of go through when we do the input. But for right now, there's a difference in how you sort your books. I'm only going to show you the one way to sort your books, but if you're talking to someone else and they say, no, that's not the way, there is different ways. There's probably 3 or 4 different ways to do your books. This one works for 99% of small home-based businesses. So this is the one that I'm going to show you. And sometimes it's the one, if you ever had a professional bookkeeper, sometimes it's the one they use, sometimes it's not. They would use other variations more often than not. But this one works for 99%. Okay, first step is I want you to sort your receipts by how you paid them, okay? So take your box of receipts and just simply put them into piles on your table, on your desk, and it's just how. So look at it. This one was paid by the credit card, goes in the credit card pile. This one's paid by the bank account, goes in the bank account pile. This one's paid by cash, goes in the cash pile. So that's the first step. You just simply want to sort it by how you paid it, okay? Now, if you get weird receipts or weird paper, so an example would be your insurance policy. How to put them on the side, and just, we're going to deal with that a little bit later. But if you have like, well, how do I put this in? We'll deal with that a little bit later. So right now, first step, I want you to deal with the how you purchased, or sorry, how you paid for anything. So again, sort it through, and anything that sort of doesn't fit, we're going to stick it in an envelope. We're going to put it on the side. Okay, the next thing I want you to do is take your bank statement and I want you to match your receipts to the statement. So you're literally going to pull your bank statement, right? And you're going to go through it line by line. So here I kind of have a sample. I don't know if you can see this on the, I'm not sure if you can see this right on there, but you will have, you will go line by line through your bank statement and attach the receipts to the bank. So in this particular one, the first one might say, you know, whatever, for fuel, take your fuel receipt, attach it to the back, okay? So you have your bank statement, all your receipts that go on that bank statement are attached to the back, and put them in the order that they appear, because when you take your stuff for taxes, you'll be very grateful that you did that little step. Now, it also includes any income that you have, so you kind of want to put that in there as well. Now, what you're doing is preparing this not only for ease of entry for you, but also for your tax professional. They will be able to nicely and easily be able to get the information that they need. Okay, next step, I want you to go down your bank statement. I want you to look at anything that's on there. And if it's personal, meaning it's not a business expense, I want you to put a little P beside it. Yeah, that one's pretty simple and easy. So, for example, lots of times we will go to some of the big box stores like a Walmart or a Costco, and we don't necessarily, sometimes we use our bank account. I've done it, you've done it, everybody's done it. That's okay, but just mark them as personal. Now, I also want you to go through and also mark right on your statement what this is for. So if this was like for gas, right? Gas or fuel, or if it's a supply, you'll write a supply. So you're going to jot that on the front here. Again, I know that you know, but remember that eventually you're going to do taxes and you're going to take this to someone. And when you take it to someone, they don't always know what your expenses are. Okay, so you want to keep it clear for your accounting professional, because clear is quick, right? So you're reducing your accounting expenses. Okay, now we have a bunch of miscellaneous paperwork. So you've got all of these things matched up, all your bank statements, all your credit cards, they've got the receipts attached to them. You got this miscellaneous paper. You're like, well, what do I do with the rest of it? And what I suggest that you do with that is leave it alone. Put it all together and write on it, you know, miscellaneous items, and you take that to your accountant and you give it to them. You say, this is my miscellaneous stuff I didn't know what to do with. Because there's lots of different things which could be done. We don't cover that in here. And I really say to customers, that's where expenses get missed, is if you don't know what you're doing with the miscellaneous stuff. So I say just put it in a box and let them decide what's needed. Okay, special items are things like travel. So if you took a trip and you went to a convention, things like assets, which are those over 500, you want to make sure that you always have copies of that kind of documentation, just weird things. And we're going to talk in a little bit of the write-offs about some of the weird things. Okay, so for now, don't worry too much about it. Okay, back here to DIY. Are we back on DIY? Good, okay. So we're going to start with the bank account. Now, let me just see if this actually comes in on this. Oh, it does, good. So here's kind of my sample bank account that we're going to be using. Now, you can see the first line. I just need to make sure that I have got my screens properly set up for you here. Okay, great. So kind of got a little bit of the bank account and this in here. So the first thing that you do is you pick your bank account that you're working on. So this is going to be my main bank account, all right? And that is actually a super important step, not to miss that. The second piece is your year. So it always starts with a default. Once you change it, it'll stick. This is our 2018 year. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick a date. Now you can type this in if you want. I'm using my mouse because it's easier for people to see. Now this first one here is BODP fee rebate. I bring that in. You can see that the bank has actually just kind of rebated this $10. So they charged a fee and then they rebated it. So we're just going to ignore that one. We could put it in and we could take it out. If that's all that's happening, really, realistically speaking, it's not overly important for you to do for your account preparer. So that's why we're ignoring this $10, but we're gonna do the next one, which says a paper statement fee. So this is the bank. When you pull this down, this is a list of all of the people, the vendors. And initially, when you first start using DIY, you have to set these up. So we're gonna put this in, and we're just gonna say bank people. I'm going to call it that because I don't know who your bank is. We're just going to call it the bank people. You would, of course, put in whoever your bank happens to be and then just hit save. Now you'll see it's in the list. The invoice number, if there is one, if you want to put an invoice number from a receipt, this particular one doesn't have anything. The amount, $10. Now, automatically, it's going to charge a GST, HST. This does not have that on there because it's a bank fee, and bank fees don't typically have GST on them. So we're just going to hit, whoops, $3, all right? We're going to hit 0. Now this would be a bank fee. Now remember the list of expenses that we talked about? Remember we changed the advertising? Okay, so here is all of our choices. Now you can go through the list, or you can just start typing. Oh look, there it is. Interest and bank charges. This piece down here, you can type in what it is, or this is just simply a place for notes. You don't need to put anything, but if you wanted to, you could put it in. Now, as soon as you do that, it drops to the bottom. And if you wanted to click on it, you can bring it up in edit form. But it really just shows you the transactions that you did on the bottom. All right, the next one. See, this one is a deposit. We're going to deal with that one in a little bit. We're not going to deal with it right now. Oh, sorry, just a second. This one is an in and out. See, $19 and $19. So with that one again, so here's the monthly plan and they've rebated it. So we're just going to ignore that one. But we'll go to the next one, which is a check. Now, I don't know who this check was for, but we are just going to assume for only demo purposes that this check was for a vendor. So if we say June 29th, and we're going to say this was Bob's Truck Repair. I'm making it up. I don't know who that was for. We're going to make it up. Now, if I have an invoice attached, I'm going to be able to reference that invoice. Let's make it something a little bit more creative. And 6118.65. Now, I want you to look, see what happened here. I put it in the amount, it automatically adds GST, so here's the total. But that's not the total, this is the total. So instead, if you put it in the total column, see, it backtracks the GST for you. So when you're doing this, in most cases, you're going to enter your amount in the total column as opposed to being in the amount column. All right, so we're going to call this a vehicle repair because, you know, that's what Bob does. And you can put a note in here if you want about what it was and save your entry. See, it pops down to the bottom. All right, let's do the next one now. Transfer to a credit card. All right, now this is one of those weird ones. Do you remember? That's not really an expense. You're paying a bill. It's not really an expense. So I'm just going to go back to expenses for a second because I want to show you. This is a great, whoops, sorry. I'll go to settings and then go to expenses. This is a really, really good example of what we were talking about where this is a weird thing. And there's nothing that really says pay my credit card, but yet it's on your bank. So you sort of want that. So we're going to put this in. Now this is an other item. It's one of those weird, not really an expense, but I had to pay the money. So you're going to plop that in and, and it will list it here. Okay, let's go back to expenses. That was this button right over here on the left-hand side. And now let's put this in. June 27th. And of course, we just have to add. You're going to pay your credit card. The amount was $621.88. There was no GST on that, so you'll just hit 0. Oh, there was credit card payment. Look at that. Well, we got them both. Well, actually, let's use the one. Paid my credit card. We use the one we just set up. And save. Okay. So the money actually comes out of your account. It's listed as going through, but it didn't actually go to an expense. And we'll see that so a little bit in the future about how that plays out in your reports. But for now, that's definitely one of those weird ones. Okay. The next transaction here we're looking at is the $100. We're going to view a check. And let's say, what's the date of that? June 21st. And let's say we gave that to Community League for advertising in their Community League newsletter. Let's just assume that's what it is. So the amount was $100. chances are pretty good your community league does not have GST, so we're going to put 0. And this is advertising. And now you can see you've got different advertising methods. Let's use paper. That's where we're going to put all of that weird stuff that we advertise in. So there, we'll just add that in so we know exactly what that was for down the road. Okay, the next one here, over on this side, workers' compensation, it looks like. Everybody has a workers' compensation payment. We know that's not set up. Now, we know there's no GST on workers' compensation. And we go to put it in, and it's not there. Oh, what do we do? So what I would usually do, because you have to actually jump to the other screen to add it, there's 2 things that you can do. So the first one, whoops, is you can open a second screen where you jump over and do that. So if I was to go add in my second screen, you can see I have 2 screens up at the top here. I would go to settings, expense types, and I would set up workers' compensation. Or the other thing that you can do, I just put in ask my bookkeeper. And it's like, I'll do it later. Like, there's something wrong, I got to do it later. So you can do that too. That's what we're going to do for now, because I really want to show you how that plays out sort of in the future. So I'm just going to leave this right now as ask my bookkeeper. Or your accountant. You could change that to ask my accountant. Okay, the next one, Intact Insurance. Again, it's a regular payment. Let's just add that in here. Oops. So Intact, of course, just a random name of an insurance company, a good insurance company, but okay. No, usually no GST on there, so we're going to do that. And let's say it's insurance, liability insurance. All right, so we've covered that. I'm just going to go up a little bit so you can see. Okay, here's another credit card payment. So let's transfer that. Put it in June. And there's my credit card. Oh, that's a big credit card payment. Of course, there's no GST, so we're going to say paid my credit card. All right. Okay, so the next one is Ritchie Brothers Auction. You can see it's in here. Now, they're a huge company, auction, you know, just a generic auction company. But the reason I chose this one is because I wanted to show you when you go to an auction, you usually buy something that you could be using later. So that would be an asset over $500. And you can see that that's a big amount that was purchased. So we're just going to say June. And we haven't used them yet, so we need to set them up. And, oops. Okay, whoops. Chances are we paid GST on whatever we bought, so I'm going to put that there. Now, this is a big purchase, over $500. I don't know what it was. It could be anything in your business, but what I want to do is to say, so this was a big widget for my truck. Let's just say, I don't know what it was. And I want you to hit save. Now, it doesn't matter what your widget is. What's important for you to know, anything over $500, one purchase, one single item over $500, has to be listed separately for your tax preparer, okay? So let's just do this again because you can see, and now Ritchie Brothers should be on there because we used it. I'm gonna put it with GST, and again, big purchases over $500. Now, one note that I wanna show you, did you see I put 2 in and I put a note in one and not in the other? If you look over here on the right-hand side, you'll see some of these are orange and some of them are blue. This one here in orange tells me I have a note. This one here in blue there's no note. So it just sort of tells you what comments are on here and what comments aren't on there. Completely insignificant to you right now. Just wanted to show you what that is. We have some really cool things coming up in the next version, by the way, about your screen and what it tells you. Really, really cool things. I'm super excited. The email for that's going to come out probably in about a week announcing it. So yeah, here's kind of a heads up. And if you're watching the replay or you're watching us down the road, it's been announced already. So go check it out. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here, it looks like we got some gas, and we're just going to say Costco just because. Now, for gas receipts, they always have GST included. So we'll just put that in. Now, the next one is not gas. It's actually purchased, looks like, in the store. Okay, chances are pretty good. I don't know what was purchased. Let's say we purchased, some clothing, which we took and we had our logo engraved on it. So where would that be? Now, this is the subjective part of write-offs, and we're going to talk about write-offs in just a second. But it's a subjective part of write-off. So where would you put t-shirts that you get? Before we go any further, let me just jump back here, because that is the perfect segue to our write-off section. So if you ask 5 different bookkeepers to do your books, you're going to get 5 different results. And 5 different accountants to do your tax return, you get 5 different results. It's not an exact science. There's rules, but it's very, very subjective. So sometimes people will class things in a different way. So when we bought those t-shirts, was that advertising, or was that kind of an office supply, or was that a miscellaneous, or like what exactly was that? So it's very subjective. There's probably 2 or 3 different ways that an accounting professional could treat those t-shirts, as inventory, and it's just a ton of different ways. So it's really them making a decision about how to treat it. And I'm going to very quickly go through this list because I don't, this isn't a class about write-offs, but I do want to make sure that you have it. So we're going to fly through this next section. You can watch the replay and watch it in more detail, or you can jump over to my website, and I have just one specific webinar or one specific class, which is just on write-offs. So you can go there, and I'll show you where that is. Actually, I'll give you a link in the follow-up email. Okay. Office supplies, really quick, I'm not going to read this off. They're things that you buy to keep your office and your business functioning. So things like pens or sticky notes or papers. The other weird thing about office supplies is when it doesn't fit somewhere else, it'll fall into office supplies. So, so it's kind of a weird category like that. A job supply are things that you do to do your job. And so if you're building a deck, for example, you had to buy the wood for the deck. So the wood usually goes into job supplies. Subcontractors, when you hire people that are not employees, that would go in as subcontractor. Dues and subscription is anything that you pay an organization regularly, like anything that you pay for dues. So for example, I belong to a networking group and I have to pay yearly dues for that. And so you would write that off there. Online resources, this is an interesting one. An online resource, when you log into the computer, like for example, DIY is a resource that you use that's online, and there's a monthly fee for that. And I think, in my opinion, I see lots of people spend money. When I tell them about their online expenses, they're actually quite surprised, and they just get charged things on their credit card, and they didn't realize it. As business people, we're busy, and that can really happen. We forget to look at our card. So I always say, it's kind of technically part of dues and subscriptions, but keep it separate because it adds up really quick. It's things like your backup and your phone system. Sometimes if you're self-employed, you have a virtual phone system. Just keep it separate because you would be surprised at how quickly that stuff adds up. Advertising and promotion, that was one of the areas that we split out into 3 categories for this demo because it's a huge example. It can consist of a ton of things. You'd be surprised, even things right down to gift certificates, for example, is a common one that people use. And gift certificates, I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying if you are going to use gift certificates in your business, lots of us do, make sure you do it in a very specific way, okay? I do cover this in my course. Here's kind of the top high level if you want to read that or take a screenshot of that. And if you want more information, I do have a course that we do cover as well. Parking and car washes. So if you don't put this into vehicle expenses. Lots of times people do. That's wrong. Parking is parking. It's a whole separate thing. Parking and car washes should be very separate. Insurance. If you have any insurance, you want to make sure that you are putting those payments in. Professional fees, which could include legal, accounting, consultants, or any other professionals. You might want to keep them separate, or you might want to put them together. This, by the way, a lot of professional fees and consultants also includes training. Lots of times people will, for example, people will take my course and they will kind of lump that in because I'm a consultant, they'll put it into there. So that would be a good example. Lots of people take training in personal development. It's really, really common with business owners, and that's where it gets lumped a lot of times. Repair and maintenance, so anything that happens to keep your place clean. This does not include, by the way, for those people who work at home, your housekeeper, by the way. It's not necessarily a business write-off. If you have a place, a leasehold improvement will apply to you. If you have a retail storefront and it's major changes, generally done on a roof, floor, or wall, not many people will use this. Banking fees, anything that's paid to a financial institution or merchant fees on a credit card, which you may or may not want to keep separate for tax purposes, they kind of go to the same place. Interest, two things about interest. There's two different kinds of interest. One is called deductible and the other is called non-deductible. It's really important you keep these separate. So deductible is any interest that you pay on a credit card, for example, or a line of credit. So it's anything, any interest that you have on money that you borrowed for your business. A non-deductible is anything that you pay to a government regulatory service, which includes the Canada Revenue Agency, interest and penalties. It also includes tickets and fines. So if you get some photo radar tickets or a parking ticket, this is generally where I put it because generally speaking, those are not deductible. So I'll drop it into this category. Okay, vehicle expenses. I have a whole webinar on vehicle expenses. It's free. You can jump over to my website. Just go to the webinar button. I'm not going to cover it here. Like it's a huge part, but it's probably one of the most misunderstood areas. One of the things about the vehicle write-offs is you need to know how you're writing it off before your year starts, and that will make a difference on the taxes. Just super, super important. It's key for any vehicle that you are tracking your kilometers. Again, we like to say it's okay to estimate, and it is okay until we get caught. So if CRA is looking, they're going to want to see a kilometer log, or you really risk danger of losing your write-offs. There's two kinds of ways to write it off if you're an incorporated company. Only one way to do it if you're a sole proprietor. This is the general way. You take your odometer reading, you write down every trip, and you get a percentage at the end of the year. Again, I'm really sorry. I'm flying through these because it's important for you to know. I don't go into a ton of detail because that in itself is a whole course. So, and jump over to my website and look at the courses if you wanted to do that. It's under mini courses, by the way. You can take the big course, but lots of people just want to know about write-offs. So it's under the mini courses button. Okay, two methods. If you're incorporated, you have a second method available to you. So one of them is kind of writing off all of the expenses, and the other one is writing off your kilometers. Whichever way you do it, the proper way to do your paperwork happens when you know how you write it off. So you need to know at the beginning of the year, not at the end of the year. The end of the year, if you do it then, you might not be getting all the right things happen in your business. So you really need to know this at the end of the year. And keep track of your kilometers. It's so, so important. Super, super important. Okay, so meals and entertainment is just it's kind of a complex area because people just don't really know how to do it. But basically, if you eat a meal for business purposes, you can write it off. Do not do things like I went to, you know, this fast food place because I'm a business owner, I'm going to write my lunch off. Those don't qualify. But when you legitimately have food or coffee, or you do something entertainment-wise to entertain a client, those are legitimate write-offs in the meal and expenses category, and you can therefore put those in. If you travel, by the way, there's some little differences, which we'll talk about in a second, in the travel. A home-based expense. Now, the home-based expenses, excuse me, you can write off a portion of your home if you are primarily home-based. This particular sheet is so simple and easy to use for home-based expenses to record your expenses. This is on the, it's a free download on the front page of my website. Go grab it, fill in the blanks, put it on your fridge or on your file cabinet or on your desk, fill it out, and then at the end of the year, you just simply give this one sheet to your tax preparer. So that's what this particular sheet. If you're ever audited by CRA, you probably would need the bills, the actual bills, but usually we can go back and obtain those even 2 or 3 years back when we call our utility companies or our landlord. So it's not a bad idea to keep a copy of it, but it really just saves time and expenses if you just record it on one sheet. Okay, travel. Again, I have a whole webinar on travel. It's sort of, it's confusing because people don't know what they can do with it. And when you go to a convention, quite often you want to take a couple days for personal. So there's just all kinds of things. What I say to people is, yes, you can write off your personal trip and your business trip under specific rules. And you need to know, sorry, you can't write off your personal side, but there's, when you mix it with business, you still can write off a portion of your trip. So there's very much rules around it. So I always tell people to put a travel package together where you sort of have an envelope and everything you did on that trip. Now, on the front page of my website as well, there is a free travel sheet. And I'm going to take you to that page so you can see what the resources are. There's a free travel sheet and you can just download that, and that sort of covers it there. But what you need to know about travel, it's really, is it reasonable or not reasonable? I'm only giving you the information that I always think, because there's no rules specifically set out by CRA other than reasonable. So there's really no gold standard. Okay, really quickly, when we go through the write-offs, if I do have a program called eSchool Live where I do teach people about how to do that. There's lots of free resources on my website. The next one starts here shortly, and they normally run every 6 weeks though, but let me just jot you quickly to the website. This one here is the eSchool. It's called Learn to Do Your Own Bookkeeping. And if you were to simply sign up, it tells you all the things that you know, where we go through the receipts, etc., and what to do and how to prepare. And then in the end of this particular class, we give you very much how to put that into DIY expense tracker. So that's what we cover. There's a bunch of webinars. See, this is today's webinar, but here are a bunch of webinars from the past. And one that I always recommend to people here is this vehicle one, writing off your vehicle. This is a really, really super popular one. And then if you just go to the home button, you will see there's a bunch of resources. So this one here, this home-based expense form, that's the one that we just talked about. And that's what's up there right now. This one's actually pretty important. So, and then of course there's the courses, just all basically the courses that I offer, but we're not here for that today. We are here for DIY expense tracker. Okay. Whew, so sorry, I raced through those write-offs like so fast, but I didn't want to. You're here to learn DIY. It's important to know the write-offs, but not necessarily in detail. Again, jump over to my website. There's some stuff over there for it. So in this particular case, now all that being said, 5 different bookkeepers, and you're doing your own book, so you are one of the bookkeepers, 5 different answers. Where are you going to put this? Well, I'm going to get a logo on it, and we're just going to call this office supplies. It's kind of in that lumpy category. You could call it advertising if you wanted to see it that way. We're just going to call it office supplies. Okay, so that was this one, and we've got another one for Costco. And whoops. There we go. We have to do it backwards. And we're going to call this office supplies again. All right, we're just going to really quickly finish this off. I've got 2 more transactions at the bottom. This is the bank, people. Oh, there's no GST on this. Bank charges. And there's some kind of fee that the bank charged for $10. Okay. So we have now entered all of our expenses from the bank into here. So it's nice and tidy. If you look at the top and you say, I want to go to my credit card, there's no transactions here anymore because that's not where you've spent it. So it's everything is under, oops, not your saving account, not your cash spending, your bank account, and all the transactions are here. If you want to search, for example, let's say you said, I want to know how much I did for fuel, you can just type in the word fuel and it will find anything that has that for fuel. If you want to say, oh, what have I spent at Costco, for example, then it will tell you what you've spent there. So this little bar here is a search button and it'll search all of your expenses if you're looking for something. Okay, questions. Let me jump over to the chat for just a second. I'm going to see. Deloitte, is that how you say it? Sorry. I think I've answered your question. Okay. Valerie. Oh, Valerie, thank you. She's asking about the home-based expenses. So we talked about that sheet, you know, the one-page sheet. Let me just really quickly show you this sheet, which is not what I want to do. Just one sec. Remember this sheet right here? So basically what you're doing is you're adding in all of your expenses. So you get your bill and whatever your power bill is, you'll just put your amount here. Now, what you're going to do with this is you're just going to take this, and this will be miscellaneous because you didn't spend it out of a bank account. So you will say on the first, and we're going to call, whoops, we're going to call this the power utilities, wherever that happens to be. And if you did $200 a month plus GST, and this was part of my home expenses. Okay, so you would basically put that in like that. Okay, I'm just going to take this out just because what I'm going to show you, I don't want any home expenses in there yet, but that's what you would do. You would go through that list and you would just enter them all. You could just total them at the end and just put in one entry, just right at the very end of the year. Okay, any more questions? Excuse me. Okay, good. All right, so let's go, excuse me, over to the sales. Now the sales are money that you've charged your customer. Now right now you only have one account where you put this in, but super exciting, in the next version you have the ability to drop that into separate accounts. So that's super exciting. For now, now it's not in the bank account, but if you remember, we didn't get any income into our bank account over here. So we're just going to assume that somebody paid us cash, okay? And cash is never good. Well, I mean, cash is always good, but harder to track. All right, we're working in June. So let's just say June 20th. And we're going to get from the very nice client, whatever your client's name happens to be, and he paid you $1,000 plus GST, and let's just say it was in cash because you were at a trade show. All right. Excuse me. And you'll see there is the money right there. Now also, June 20th, we're doing another trade show. We're just going to call it miscellaneous trade show customer. And let's just assume you got another $500 total. And it's another trade show sale. So we're just going to record it that way. And you would continuously just record your sales. Now, this particular bank statement doesn't have any deposits for sales, but if you did, you would record it. That's how you would record any deposits that come in here, which is simply be in the sales category. We keep it very different because there's a real cool upgrade coming, and that's why it's different. But I'm not going to tell you about that just yet. Okay, so sales and expenses, that's how you record them. Super easy. One last piece to show you, and that is your reports. So when you go to the reports, you basically have 4 different types of reports that you can run. These 3 right here on the right-hand side, so this income report, the expense report, and this expense report by vendor, all give you the detail in each particular piece. So if you were to run, I think we started 01/01/2018. Let's just go all the way here. And so this would show you the reports in the order by the vendor, see bank people, etc. And it would show you all of the breakdown for the costs that you have. This one here shows it to you by the expense type, so it's in order, so all your office supplies are in order. Actually, let's just go look at that, just to make sure we have it. So see, you would have advertising is kind of in alphabetical order now by this type. And the income, this gives you a report and shows you all of the income that you made. So these are super cool reports for your tax preparer. But this one is kind of the one that's of most interest to most people. And this is the one that you want to be watching most of the time as your year goes through. And this is called your profit and loss. And it's going to tell you how much money you are making overall. Now, let me just put this here, and I'm going to put the bank statement back up. Okay. So this first line shows you income. Now, in the next version, the income will be broken out into categories. In this version, we just have one income line. So this is the money that you made. So if we drop back here, we go back to the sales, this is the money you made. You made $1,476. One thing that I need to tell you that might be confusing is the GST is not included in here. If you are not registered for GST, then you don't put the GST separate. I should have told you that right at the beginning. But as you're recording, the GST just becomes part of your price. Always the GST ends up being 0. Now, let me just take a little segue because this is actually an important point. Right here, you would just uncheck that box so that GST doesn't get included, and then it will always calculate that for you. So again, when do you use that? When you're a sole proprietor or incorporated company, you have not registered for GST, so you don't report your GST to CRA, you don't charge GST, you would uncheck this particular box right here. So I apologize, I should have told you that right in the very beginning. And then if you do that, then you wouldn't be recording the GST on each transaction. Okay, so this is your problem list. It excludes GST always. And here's the different categories, right? So here's advertising. Here's that Ask My Bookkeeper one we had to change. Here's all the different categories that we use, and you can see how much money you spent. So right here, it shows your income. Right here, it shows all your expenses and your expense total. And right here shows you how much money you made. Now, this one here, we had way more expenses because DIY Tracker, it's about both income and expenses, but more people have questions on expenses, so we did a lot more of that here. So you lost money. An interesting point about this end total right at the end, this total is what you are likely, it's going to be very close to the number that you are taxed on. So when you take it to your tax preparer, they're kind of using this number at the end to sort of prepare your taxes, sort of-ish. You'll notice on the bottom here, big items and paid my credit card. So it sort of sets those other payments off because your tax preparer needs to see it differently. And that's when that button, if you recall, let's go back to the settings. Anytime you check this green button right here, it's going to put it down into the other category down here. Okay, so so if you don't like it in your expenses, you check that button and it moves it down. Those are really important numbers for your tax preparer. So make sure that that anything that is in here, they would have a copy of. So big purchases, this particular line item, you'd want to make sure you give your accountant a copy of that. Okay. So really quickly, you can see this is your profit and loss. Now I am just going to go back here for a second. Now we were working in June. I want to just do very quickly another expense. And oh, that's a here. I'm just trying to do really quickly. Oops. Let's see, we got our truck fixed again. And okay. Excuse me. Whoops. Wrong one. I'm going to advertise in the Community League one more time. Okay. So the reason I just wanted to really quickly show you that is when you jot back in here again and you go back to your profit and loss, you will see that now, see I put different months in, I put different time frames in. So now you have everything for June, whatever you put in for September, whatever you put in for October, and it gives you your totals. So it's always good to know, how am I doing? Am I making any money? This is a really good report to watch, and it'll just simply tell you what kind of money you're making. Now this, of course, is the expenses. If we just drop back to sales, and we're just going to do another trade show in October. We're just going to say that. And I'm just going to refresh this particular screen. And now you see we did $5,000 and these were our expenses. So you can kind of see where you're at and how it is transpiring. So that's it with DIY, other than the dashboard. And the dashboard just really tells you this is what's going on all year. So this one here is our current year. This one down below, this is your last year. So how am I doing this year compared to last year? It tells you whether you're making money or not, which of course also tells you how much money you should be putting away for taxes or not. I think that's it. Let me just double check in for questions and see what we have for questions. Okay, so I'm being asked, am I going to do travel? Not in this particular one. If you like, if you jot onto my website, there's this one called mini courses here. And these mini courses all are about different areas of just different areas, and you can just take a small mini course. The one that you this one here, Understanding the Write-Offs, this one here, probably the most popular, which is why it's first. And it just really, I definitely explain travel in there and how you write off your expenses. So that would be a suggestion. I'm not going to go too much deeper into it in here. Another question, what does my accountant need? Okay, so when you want to go to reports, your accountant needs this report right here. So if you view the report, this profit and loss one is what they need, what they must have. If they ask you for detail, you could absolutely print off this one for your income and this one for your expenses. Okay, those are not, if you recall, that's these reports. This is what your accountant is going to want at tax time. So you can just simply print those off and take it to them. Sometimes people bring the receipts, which is really cool because then we have it if we need it. But for the most part, these are the only ones that are absolutely necessary. Okay, what else do we have for questions? I think that's it. Did I catch everybody's question? Sorry, there's a lot to go through there. I just didn't want to miss anybody. If there isn't, just write me a quick note. I think we're good. Okay, so again, here's my website. There's lots of sources of information on there. You are more than welcome to jump on there. There's lots of free stuff or some inexpensive mini courses that you could take. And I will follow it up in an email on the replay. I'll do a last check for any questions. We are good. We're good. All right, I'm Lynn Webb. Thank you very much for sticking with me. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.